hopefully, he says, this is working. Hopefully, he says, this is working. It's that one which is supposed to be whisper out. Hopefully, he says, that is working. And you can hear me, and it is all clear sound, because I've had to make sure the phone is on charge for this, because poor phone has been getting a lot of work. And, okay, that's a small problem, but nothing I couldn't show out. So hopefully that is now sorted, and it looks okay. Hello everyone. I'm going to move this around so it's a bit closer to in front of me, because that should be easier down. And I've got the questions on Discord active. Now, one of you, the reason I've got the Discord going and I've got the Discord questions, as you all know, is I'm doing these broadcasts while on the road from my phone. And, well, that can lead to very interesting things. It can lead to incredibly interesting things. And basically, this is a way of me making sure I don't lose your questions. Now, it also does mean, especially as we haven't yet got a bot system set up, that if you aren't able to post the questions in Discord, you're just posting them in the chat. It makes it very complicated for the admins who are doing it to do those sort of things, and make hard choice. It's hard for them to push together. Knight, don't take this the wrong way, but there is a very different phraseology. You have just written in there that I'm heavily in debt. I'm not sure where you got that impression from. Yes, I am organising a bridging loan and those things. I am not in debt. I don't have much money because my account is so low, but I'm not in debt per se. So there is a difference to that phraseology. There is a difference between being heavily in debt and there is a difference between having no money. I'm in the no money, not in debt category. However, when I say no money, not in debt, basically what I've been doing is my policy has been always, I will buy the books and then forget to buy the food. I don't know how I end up the size I do, because frankly, I just don't know that. It's always the same issue. So anyway, I've dealt with that one which came up, and a little bit rude to suggest those things in a live chat, but I wanted to deal with that before anyone got worried about me or anything like that, because I do know you all listen and worry. Hello everyone, welcome to, this is supposed to be stiller. Please let this not be fizzy. Why is it the Swedes are obsessed with fizzy water? Oh, thank God it is still. You do not want to, the Swedes put fizzy water everywhere. I love Sweden, I love Stockholm, I love Gothenburg. They are wonderful people, they're very interesting people, they're very kind people. Just please stop it with the sparkling water. Just stop it, you're killing me. I don't like sparkling water. If I want something fizzy, I'll buy a Sprite, I'll buy a Coke, I'll buy something fizzy. If I want something still, I buy water. This is what I want. So yeah, I'm going to be going through the books today and all the how much, all the ones which have been worthwhile spending on money, and yeah, they've blown the budget. They have blown the budget. I am looking at my, I look at the money I allocated to spend on books on this trip, and yes, I who have fairly good discipline and control over my spending in every other aspect of my life, have absolutely terrible control over my spending when it comes to books. Admittedly, I can justify all the lovely pile which I have carefully hidden behind me. Yeah. Carefully hidden behind me. But, yes, they are fun. So, hello Timmy Locker, hello Renon, hello Bugger829, hello Steve Clarke, hello Blackman Maximus. Runon, thank you for doing all the things you're doing today. And I know you've been doing a lot of work to try and get that the bot working and the bot set up. And when we eventually get it working, it will make some people, everyone's lives a lot easier. Hopefully. Hello Raptorat, hello DeBrock, hello Frame15, hello 90 Day for One, hello Michael Cooch, hello Renault DG40, hello Stephen Richards, hello everyone. Yes, I do use books as part of my diet plan. It's choices between food or books, I buy the books. So, let's start off with some of the questions and then I'll get to some of the books. Black Maxus, what are your thoughts on Canada's new River class destroyers? Well, they're pretty darn cool, actually. They're basically, they've gone for the they've actually upped the size a bit again of the Type 26 hull design, and with the VLS they're putting in them. The only thing I am a bit surprised is the replacement of rim C-Scepter with rim. I think I would have stuck with C-Scepter, but I can understand it as well as a purely point defense weapon. It probably does have an edge, especially because of the way it's mounted and orientated. But I prefer the C-Scepter for its flexibility, but it is heavier. And it's like many things. It's half a dozen one, six of the other. That's the thing. That's the reality. Oh, they are all going for tax deductions. I have kept every single one of the receipts. They are going towards my tax deductions and all the costs. And luckily, I did come over here with a bag which was many kilograms under the limit. It will now be over the limit when it goes back properly. But it started off many kilograms under the limit. I came over here with a bag which weighed 14 kilograms out of an allowance of about 24. And I don't want to think what it is now. It's going to be now. Michael, thank you. Did the shipshape crew vote before leaving? Oh yes, we all voted. We all put in postal votes. I actually did a postal. We actually did postal votes by proxy, which is something you can do in the UK. Which is a fun thing, because you can do voting by proxy normally, but I most of it ended up doing postal votes by proxy because, well, in the case of my family, as we don't know exactly when we're moving house, we weren't sure exactly where or what day we'd be doing these things, so we did it by postal vote by proxy, and postal votes for the rest of them. Yeah, but Canada's River class are cool. They're going to be. It's a good name to go with. If they can't go Travel class, go River class. It's. I would have been tempted to go Travel class, but they might have decided that's too fighty because, you know, if you have Travel class destroyers, that's basically guaranteeing there's going to be a war at some point because those things only turn up when there are world wars. So I can understand why they didn't do it, although River class tend to also turn up in world wars in Royal Navy history. Question 2. How many fish can Fisher fish from Fresh Fish Fridays? I do not know, but a lot. Team Locker. How was the thunder in Stockholm yesterday? It was fine. It's currently raining outside now, which is why I'm doing this from in here and why it got delayed a bit and everything was being a bit muddled as to what was happening. Because originally the plan was to get together at least a couple of the shipshape crew, and we were going to go up to the top of my hotel, where on the 7th floor there's a lovely terraced bar area. And we were going to broadcast from there. And basically we're going to start off again as we did before, start off on one channel, broadcasting, and then move on to the next channel. I don't know what's going to happen now. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's just going to be me chatting away for a while and talking through books. Black Maximus, question 3. Do you think that with the issues related to the Gaza pier bodies in the military, there is a need for portable breakwaters, like say the Phoenix breakwaters used for military harbours, maybe transported by semi-submersible heavy lift ships? There certainly wouldn't be a bad thing to have, but the problem, Black Maximus, you have is there are so many other things we need to do first before we get to those. Those are on the very much would like to have, possibly very useful things to have pile. At the moment, we have to work through the critical to have and the essential to have piles. So, as interesting as they would be, I think they're not going to be the focus. And question 4: is the Jeopard class by the Marine National set the standard for the first London Naval Treaty with about 2,500 ton standards? How would this affect destroyer development of ships? And would the American interwater destroyers finally be stable? It would be really interesting because if you think about it, they use roughly 1,500 tons standard as the actual description, then the 1,850 tons for the destroyer leaders. So you would have 2,500 tons standard, you've added another 1,000 tons, and you're probably going to grow up the sheer tonnage of destroyers allocated as well. And you're probably going to have destroyer leaders, which are going to be able to be 3,400 tons. So I wouldn't be surprised if you end up with the Royal Navy building destroyers of roughly 2,000 ton standard and 3,000 ton standard for the destroyer leaders, because you will be able to get, for the Royal Navy, that's an extra five destroyers for the cost of 4. And whilst that might not sound a lot, if you're able to build 200 plus destroyers, well, if you're given 200 destroyers of 2,500 tons, if you build them 2,000 tons, that's going to add a lot to lot. That's going to give you 250 destroyers, and that's useful. And there isn't enough difference between a 2,500 ton and a 2,000 ton destroyer, probably in operational capability and flexibility as far as the Royal Navy is concerned at that point, to make a difference. But would it make the American interwater destroyers finally to be stable? Well, that depends. Do they keep to their original plans but just use the new tonnage to build and make stability, or do they try to max out the new tonnage that they have available? What do we think is going to happen, everyone? New tonnage get maxed out? Yes, that is probably the case. Right on. In line with Blackburn Maximus's question 2, what technology from history do you think would be worth redeveloping for current times? What technology? I'm interested in anti-submarine warfare mortars. I think ASW mortars haven't had enough interest in years, and I think for littoral operations and dealing with submarines in shallow waters and dealing with things like uncrewed underwater vehicles, which you might want to have an area of effect weapon to deal with, I think a mortar could be a very useful weapon. But so far, I've been argued against by most people who I've made that case to. So I could be completely wrong, but I do think anti-submarine warfare mortars would be something I would want to push in. Alex, non-nuclear boats for the Royal Navy. With the Russians messing around the OS Island, is it time for Ireland to review the idea of a number of small coastal submarines, and what would you estimate for such a vessel? Not really, mainly because, okay, so let's say if you set up the production line, what is going to happen? Are you going to end up with vessels like upholders, which are the very large, very capable SSKs, but in no way coastal submarines, realistically, but they can be used as such, but they're not really small coastal submarines because they fit all our criteria, and they would have been good if we kept them going and kept on producing them. Or are you going to try and shoehorn in another production line which produces something completely different to our SSNs, so cannot bleed technology off them, in which case you're going to take money and time away from the SSN program? Or are you going to try and push for a foreign order? Now, a foreign build order might make sense to many people, but it's not going to fly with the British government, and it's not going to fly with the Scottish electorate and various other electorates in the UK. If you're building ships in the UK, you have to build them in the UK. It's politically inadvisable to do anything else. It's one of the few interesting things about British defence, And governments have found this out to their sufferance in the past, that things get really problematic if you start building abroad when it comes to ships. You can acquire vehicles, rifles, things, all sorts of things abroad, aircraft regularly. But ships, for some reason, the British public still gets very patriotic about it, and that's useful. 9 p.m. your time night, if you're in the UK, is 10 p.m. my time here. I may go that late, but I may also be worried about keeping my neighbours awake in the hotel. But honestly, would it be useful for them? I would say more. What I'd be looking at immediately would be things like MP8s, the P8s, definitely. That I think they'd be far more something I'd be looking at. And I think you should have a joint R. I think like the F-35 is a joint program. I think the P8 should be a joint program with both the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy maintaining at least a squadron, and there being a joint training / reserve squadron as well, so you have 3 squadrons of them. I really think we need about 24 P8s in service for Britain. I would say that's a far better head for them at trying to start up an extra submarine program, mainly because every time you start up a new program, you have to start up officers for that, you have to detail funding of it, do all sorts of studies, etc. What's more cost efficient every single time is to expand an existing program. And this is part of the problem. When we get into the defence debate in the UK and people ask why we spend so much money and appear to get so little, mostly it's because we're always starting programs and shutting them down. And instead of just concentrating on investing things, like Type 45 should have been built with Mark 41 VLS from the get-go. And in the nicest way, we should have built all 12 of them, or at least 9 to 10 of them. And that would be helping us out a lot now and giving us a lot more flexibility in all sorts of areas we're dealing with them around the world. And this is an ongoing problem we have in the UK. We keep cutting existing programs which are running quite well to fund a new potential program. It's always the promise of jam tomorrow, not dealing with actually spreading the jam we have today and making sure we have enough jam for the jam we have today. So I would say before I start looking at coastal submarines or anything like that, I'd be looking at expanding the P8 buy. I'd be looking Type 31, 32 buy. I'd be looking at all those things before I looked at anything else like an extra submarine program. Hello Megascrow, hello Robo Thinker, hello Gary Robson, hello everyone who's joined the chat. Paul Amos, hello. What side is the bar on the Prince of Wales? I saw a listing to Port of Dock 5 days ago and wondered if she was short on beer glass. I have no idea. I'm trying to think. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Like says, would you rather go about Iron Brew for 10 years but get rid to resurrect 5 ships that are scrapped or of your choosing, or have unlimited Iron Brew for 10 years? And if yes, to deform what ships? I probably need the caffeine of Iron Brew to keep me going for that time period, but let's be honest, I would probably go with the 5 ships. And 5 ships for museums? Oh, it would be HMS Illustrious, HMS Renown, HMS Warspite, and HMS Nubian, and HMS Eskimo, probably. Question 6. How much crew would be saved on the Gerald 4 class if they adopted some of the British systems? That's an interesting question to get into, especially once you're talking about the weapons management systems and the weapons storage systems. There have been various prospects put forward of as much to 25%. I don't think that's quite accurate, but I think you could save quite a lot if you did. I think you could save a lot of the crew requirements, but you'd have to build those systems in from the get-go. You can't just adapt the Gerald Ford hull to take those systems. You need to design those systems into the ship from the get-go, or do a major, massive refit, which we're talking many months, if not years. So yeah, it's a case of you're not going to be able to do that quickly. Maybe the future ones can be designed with it. If I was the U.S. Navy, I'd certainly be paying close attention to the Royal Navy, to the ships they're building, to the carriers, Queen Elizabeth class carriers, and how the system's working, thinking, well, could we do this? Team Locker, how would NATO block St. Petersburg if this situation were demanded? Kaliningrad. Let's see. Team Locker, that's an interesting question, and I am going to keep this in as broader terms as possible because I'm going to attempt to answer your question, but I keep it broader. I have spent a lot of time in Swedish and Norwegian museums as of late, and when you add in the presence of Finland, which I'm going to on Tuesday, I leave for Finland, and Estonia, etc., I wouldn't be surprised if mines and SSKs came into it along with airstrike. I think that's probably what you would have going on. But I'm honestly not sure how long those ports would need to be blocked for. I have a question, but it's about good sources on Marusu, Japan in 1939. Can you save that question for when I'm at home and I have the books access to me? I do have some interesting books, though, to discuss about Japan this evening, actually, curious enough. That's on the books that are broken the bank. Henk, how expensive would diesel electric propulsion on the Challenge class be if you were to using 6 sets of 4 engines from the Deutschlands? Expensive in terms of financial output, probably not massive. Expensive in terms of space and in terms of actual industrial capacity, might well be inefficient, but you could probably do it. Max, what if Lion blew up during the run to the south, killing Beatty? Admiral King might like the Royal Navy more in World War II. It all depends on who takes charge. Honestly, does. It could be Evan Thomas actually could take charge because he's pretty senior and he would be in a position to take charge of that force, especially on the run north. But that's a whole massive thing, and all sorts of things change at that point. Depends how the Battle of Jutland goes, who comes out of it a massive hero. That will probably affect who becomes first Sea Lord after Jellicoe. All these things. How realistic are frigates and ships of the line in the game anno 1800? I haven't played it in a long time. So let's start off with books, and they are not going to be in the description today. I know I normally put them in the description, but that's because I can't spell some of the words and don't have the things on my computer keyboard to actually put some of them in properly. But this is the Chasnich Chanishi Japanese Shiriketin, 1931 to 32, by Obersetz von Jacob Fischer. And it is beautiful. It's got beautiful maps in. It is all in German, and as you can guess, my German, I haven't studied German since I was 13 years old and told that dyslexics couldn't do foreign languages. But I'm going to have to be brushing up on it. But it has beautiful maps in it. And it's all about 31-32 in between China and Japan. So it's a really, really cool book to get. I'll move my water bottle out of the way. Sorry, I keep putting my water bottle away. There you go. And yeah, you can tell why I couldn't turn this book down when I found it in a museum. I basically went, yeah, I'm taking that. Quite a few of my colleagues do complain they never have a chance. They do have a chance. They do have a chance to get to the books. It's just usually I arrive at the museums first because I'm setting up. So I have a little time to check out some of these sites beforehand. And so I've got this. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. Google Lens is very much your friend. It is. And it's 1931-32, published in 1932. And yes, I picked it up for probably about £15. All in all, cost me. But getting it home, etc. But it's well worth it. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book, and it's full of so much information there. And of course, it's a 1930, early 1930s German perspective on what is happening between Japan and China. And that's a complete, and I've been looking at what the British and the Americans have been saying, and even sometimes what the Japanese have been saying. So this is another point of view for me to look at. Then we have this. And this is thankfully in English. So this is very easy, but you can only get this in one place in the world. And it cost 150 krona, which is about £12. When Sweden was ruled from the Ottoman Empire by Klas Kronborg, Per Sandin, and Esa Karlsson, and it's produced in the Army Museum. And it is a gorgeous, gorgeous book. It is full of lovely quotes, a lot of information, a lot of details, and you will not get it anywhere in the world other than the Army Museum. And I don't know if you realize today we have actually visited the Army Museum. They allowed us in to film, and they were very, very nice about it. They helped us out when we couldn't get to go to see the veterans, the veteran flotilla because of security reasons. And by the way, Scandi Ship still up to fund. Ship Shape is still up to fund. Please go fund it if you're interested in seeing all the behind-the-scenes stuff we post there and all the stuff that is supposed to be coming out. I have to admit, I hand it all over to the lovely Gareth. Gareth the Brit, and he sorts it all out. But this is a gorgeous, gorgeous book. And the reason Dr. Dan isn't here, of course, today is he's flown back today. So that's rather sad. Yeah. It has been noted that I appear in quite a lot of my colleagues' shorts when they do them. I think I'm in both quite a lot of Dr. Dan's and Gareth's. So now I will only be looking large in Gareth's from now on, though. Because both of them seem to manage, every time they get a video of me, I look the size of a house. Anyway. Black Motors. If the Queen are fitted with small tube boilers, what changes would happen to the hull, like a length beam, shape defect? With small tube boilers, you could probably leave everything else pretty much the same because you're upping the power. If you did fit them with small tube boilers and you decided to give them, let's say, a Tiger class length to beam ratio, you'd push up the weight, but you'd also push up the speed, and you could well end up with what I would say is 28 knot plus, rather than getting to 28 knots, 28 knot plus capital ships. Staff Thompson, Batch 2 Rivers versus Vigilant class OPVs. Which would you prefer? What do I want to do with them? Vigilance is better in a slightly higher threat environment, but Batch 2s are better for long-range patrolling and presence mission. So peacetime, I probably want Rivers. Black Masters. If the Queen Elizabeths are fitted with small tube boilers, and I've got the questions a lot there, so I'm sorry if I'm looking weird. Small tube boilers, the I class is simply an improved version. There's also fast battleship. How will this affect World War I? If the Royal Navy has that much of a heavy fast wing by Jutland and they're all 20 knot plus ships, well, either they're going to be with the you might still have the 5th Battle Squadron with the battlecruiser fleet, but they're going to be much faster getting down in the run to the south, so they're getting far closer to that formation when it hits the first scouting group. So there could be more damage done there. You're also going to have the reality that probably the ones which are operating with the Grand Fleet are probably going to end up be operating in the fast group with 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron, which might mean when 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron runs into 1st Scouting Group, later on in the fight, and this is going to be whatever survived from the earlier encounters with 5th Battle Squadron and the Battle Cruiser Force in far more cohesion because they've been faster and more able to keep up them, is going to run into that. If the battle goes the same way, it might not. It might not. Sheridan, in light of my medical questions to Dr. Dan last week, Admiral Henderson been kept fit and in office until October, December 1939, and then been on light duties until June 1940, but is for his still untimely death. What would he have achieved? I honestly and sincerely doubt that Churchill would have been able to pause the capital ship and carry construction like he did. He might have still been, I think the compromise would have been pausing things like the Lions and maybe even the Implacables, but the Illustriouses, the King George V's, would have carried on construction as fast as they could. I honestly don't see him allowing that through, and I think he'd also sneak through probably HMS Unicorn. Okay. That's a big thing from Michelle there. Let me just make sure I don't lose the questions. Hank, if German 11-inch guns were coupled with a Dunkirk-style rigid chain rammer, reloading at any angle, but stoppages were caused by firing of other guns above 50 degrees, how much would this boost the theoretical rate of fire? Probably would increase it by roughly half a round a minute overall, because of it's going to be changing the systems, etc. There's a lot you would need to do to get it to work, but you could do it. You'd need to completely redesign the turrets, though. You're not just fitting the Dunkirk style rigid chain, the rammer system, but you're also having to redesign everything around it. So you're going to be substantially redesigning the entire turret layout, which means you're going to have a very interesting different ship. Could a Charnos quad turret be placed in the same barbette size? Probably not. Down there, triple turrets? No. I don't think you could probably fit that, but I think you'd have to redesign the entire turret structure for what you're talking about. What kind of tonnage is needed from one hospital ship class but would suit Canada? Maybe an icebreaker hull or at least ice frequent? You could probably get an off-the-shelf design. You're probably looking at something like the British use for their various ships, which do the Arctic patrol ships, etc., and all those things. That's sort of what you're looking at. Have I watched Shiji Bang Bang? Yes, I've watched Shiji Bang Bang. Speaker for the night. How much of a problem from this from 9601? How much of a problem was the fire that broke out in the supercarrier Constellation during her construction? The New York Fire Department was also dealing with a mid-air collision as well. It was annoying, but I don't think it was as much of a problem. It's never a good thing when a fire breaks out on a ship in construction or whatever in our life. So it's a problem, but yeah, it's not something you don't deal with. You just deal with it and you move on. Michelle, if I so may, I designed a battlecruiser to spec a fictional ship from the skies of Acadia. The ship is 1920s with a 10-inch main guns and speed of a cruiser as per the game specs. The single 16-inch guns are to represent the Moonstone cannon. What do I think of it? Okay. So this thing has... Did I just overload the PC I'm running this through? Potentially. I think it looks highly interesting. I'm not sure how it would do in combat, but yeah, give it a go. A single 16-inch gun is not going to be that helpful, but it's not going to be problematic either. You've got, I think, about 8 10-inch guns mounted forward. And yeah, you've got some 6-inch guns aft. and 6-inch casemate guns. So you've got about, let's see, 2, 4, 6, so that's 12, plus another 6 aft, 18 6-inch guns, 8 10-inch guns, 1 16-inch gun. Yeah, it looks interesting. I wouldn't personally probably build that, but yeah, it's a place to start if you want to do some sci-fi inspired ships. What if HMS Australia and HMS New Zealand were Lion class? How does that change Battle Dog and Mank? It makes it far, far more dangerous for the Germans, because those ships are going to be far bigger and far more powerful. They're going to be far scarier. It's also going to make it far tougher for them to try and justify giving them up post-World War I. South Thompson, oh wow, I thought the Batch 2 were more of a combat option. No, they have the same weapons fit the Batch ones. It is the standard rating that pumps the Vigilant over. Yes, it does. When you get to something in the fortress, will you be all over boiler room for the Finnish submarine investigator that is on the supply there? Yes, I will be all over that boiler room. Ruhum, Leslie, YouTube broke again for me, and I ended up reinstalling Chrome. I do love my Chrome browser. Hank, with Gascoigne at 37.8 knots standard and 37.8 thousand tons, not knots, okay, 1,000 tons at standard, and 44.7 thousand tons full, and now that's at 46,000 tons standard and 56,000 tons full. Could a ship of 67 to 70,000 tons add a fourth turret? Yeah, you should be able to easily. So Thompson, for a reminder, what's the hashtag for this year's Christmas wager? Why is there a Christmas wager going on? Oh yeah, the 15. I need to get 15,000 subscribers by Christmas. Let me deal with getting through this ship trade trip first. By the way, tomorrow, if you want some real fun, tomorrow I am spending time with Paradox. Yes, the people who make Victoria 3 and the people who make, and I kid you not, Hearts of Iron 4. They are coming to see their friend Garius. They're coming to see all of the shipshape crew at the National Maritime Museum. So one of the things we are going to be talking about with them is potentially some admirals to add in to Hearts of Iron and what they could do for around the world. And I have some suggestions already, but I thought one of the cool things I could do with all of you is if you want to comment below, i.e. not in the chat, i.e. in the comments below this video, put in some suggestions of admirals you think should be included who aren't in the game, I'd be really happy. And there are lists available for which admirals are in the game and which admirals aren't. And by the way, you can have two types of admirals. You can have admirals who are advisors, and I've got some suggestions for that already, and admirals who are going to be commanders. And also, anything you think could be in those games that could be improved, please put it down below. And, well, yes, I see them tomorrow, which is going to be the 1st of July, 2024. Okay, 1st of July, 2024. So if you're commenting on the 4th of July, 2024, i.e. Independence Day, and I don't put it in, and you then go, why didn't you suggest this to them? Well, it's because it's too late. I'm sorry. I can't go back in time. I'm not Doctor Who. I'm Dr. Alex. We have different skills. Doctor Who can time travel. I can argue about ship's guns. Each are equally beneficent skills. And top. Black Maxus, how did Hood strip a turbine? Pushing it too hard. Literally, that's how you strip a turbine. You are pumping in, you are putting out to full. And thank you for all the super chats coming in. As said, there are more books going to be coming out soon. As soon as I got through Black Maxus' existing questions, I'm going to get to them. What if the Lion class was oil fueled only? They would be really frigating fast, and in the nicest way, the argument to keep them would probably be far stronger. And Tiger would be oil fueled definitely. And then again, the argument to keep her post-Second World War post World War I will be even higher. And when will Patreon suggestions for September be open? probably next Sunday. Probably I'll open them while I'm flying back. But shh. There is a little trick going on. My sister thinks I'm returning home on the Monday. I'm actually flying back on the Sunday night. So I'm going to be at home on the Sunday evening. I might not be in time for doing Bruships, and I might not get to do a Bruships next week, but I will try and record a video to cover for it. I do apologize for that, but it's a little surprise for my sister. So here's another one. Facing the Sea, Essays in Swedish Maritime Studies by Simon Ekström and Leos Muller. Now, this book I highly recommend, and I highly recommend it because there is someone in here called Frederick Camp. And Frederick Camp was a very nice gentleman who showed us around the Maritime Museum in Karlskrona, and I highly recommend going there. This book is in English, so hopefully everyone who's watching this channel can read it and can follow it. And it's absolutely a glorious book. It's got titles which read from The Architecture of Early Modern Sea Routes into Stockholm, The Maritime Military Archery of Bowmen on European Ships of 1000 to 1600, The Human Factor, The Ship Vasa and Its People, The Swedish Vessels in the Prize Papers, Cases from the American Revolutionary War, On the Honor of the Naval Ensign, The Swedish Navy and Symbolism of Naval and Merchant Flags, Out of the Water, Wrecks and Salvage, The Intersection of Death, Time Past, and National Glory, Swedish Naval Officers and the Nation, the Discourse of National Identity in the magazine Varflotta, 1905 to 1920, Tommy the Sea Dog, Maritime Collections and Material Culture of the Baltic Boat Children, How to Break the Rules Just Right, The Alarmed Smugglers, which I can't think why I felt was appropriate considering what I'm now wearing, Here, There and Everywhere, Ash Disposal at Sea and the Construction of Maritime Memory Landscape. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. It really is. Again, this one cost me 300 krona, which is about 25 quid to buy. And I highly, highly recommend it. It's really cool. I've been reading through it. There's a great range of titles, a great range of discussions, and it's got some great pictures in it as well. It's got the full, history ones. That's the Mary Rose, but it's also got this one from the Naval Archery in the Middle Ages, which I do love. And basically, if I was going to be talking to Shadowversity or someone like that, I'd be taking this book along and going, there are sections in this book you will want to read, and you will be loving. And there are sections in this book that probably Drakenafel wants to read, but I don't think he managed to get a copy. He might have. He might have done. Oh. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. And let's do another one as well. What have we got here? That's the Visitor's Guide. Oh, yeah. This is the Arms and Armour exhibition, Norwegian Armed Forces, that I picked up in Oslo. And it's all about their exhibition of ammunition and guns. And one of the things I have realized very quickly coming to Scandinavia is they really like their weapons. They truly love their weapons. They truly, truly love their weapons. They love them. They also love displaying other people's flags they've captured. And this is a really good old primer. And I think this was about, I forget what it was. I think it was about 100. This is the trouble. The exchange rates keep changing because every time, by the time I got used to Norway, I was moving to Sweden. By the time I get used to Sweden's exchange rate, I'm now going to Finland. And then I've got a day in Estonia as well. It's just going to be great fun. Just keep getting confused. My trouble with the book buying is that I bought Big Red, and that has plenty of space. And we are traveling by foot, by train, and by ferry and plane. These book chats are always expensive. They are, definitely are. That's Mitchell. But Doctor Who can visit them. Don't rub it in. That's the cruelty. This is why I know Doctor Who is not real. It's science fiction. Because if Doctor Who was real and you really had the ability to time travel, you'd be going back in time to see all the cool naval battles. You would. You just never do any of the other stuff which Doctor Who gets. They spend the finest time that goes off doing weird stuff doing. Why go fight the Daleks when you go watch Battle of Trafalgar? I'd love to collab with Shadowversity. It'd be quite funny. I'll talk about naval medieval history. Mainly because I like to get as many people interested in talking about this stuff as possible. Who says he hasn't? They've never done, Steve, they've never done that as a program. As they haven't done as a program, it hasn't happened. Speaking of Knights, Runon themselves. Am I correct in thinking that stripping a turbine involves shooting blades, fans, fins out the backside of the turbine or something? Not necessarily, but it does involve making a turbine basically collapse internally sometimes. It basically means the steam has run through at sufficient pressure that the blades have in some way not behaved the way they're supposed to. At the worst point, disintegrated internally. And that can cause even more issues. Lauren Maximus, if the British invented the snorkel system of submarines in, say, 1914, could they use subs to blockade the German Baltic coast? They tried that without the snorkel system. With it, they definitely would be. Would I rather have no iron brew for 1 year, but your sister having the cooking skills of Gordon Ramsay, or would you rather have unlimited iron brew for 1 year? There is no way that question does not get me into trouble, Blackburn Maximus. There is no way I am answering that in any way, shape, or form. I like my life and I like my limbs. Question 19. My little cousins watched this video, remember. There is stuff they will pass on. To fix the strip turbine of Hood, would they have had to open up, or could they fix it without it? They could disassemble the turbine internally and rebuild the turbine internally, but they would probably actually have to open up in some ways to get components through. Right, that's all caught up. Let's go to the next book. Oh, yes. This one's going to... Hikes Along the Navy Road. This was 50 Norwegian krona. And this is gorgeous because the Navy Road, basically. It's all about the stuff which is built along the various railway lines and where you can hike along through them. And, it's the ore transporting route. And one of the things me and Gareth have certainly considered doing, and me and Dr. Dan have considered doing, is coming back and walking that route at some point, if we are able to, or maybe definitely coming through the train on that route. If we do the train, we'll be joined by the rest of our colleagues from Scandi Ship 24. If we are walking it, one of them would want to join us, but probably won't be able to. And the other one would look at us as if we were insane. I love my colleagues. But yeah. And this is the thing, is it folds out and gives you full maps. And these are the lot of books which you pick up because as a historian, you're always looking for the places and context of where to go and where to find the things. And it's books like this which often reveal it, because it's going to sound strange, but the big, thick history texts almost sometimes treat that information as, of course you'll know where it is. Of course you'll know what's there. There's no need to tell you this. You automatically will know. And sort of going, no, I don't. Please tell me. But no, of course you know. Everyone knows. It's obvious. No, please tell me. Give me a map. No. We'll carry on. Everyone knows this. And then you get a little book like this, and it goes, here is where it happened. Thank you, Lord. So this is the sort of book which you will very rarely see historians going, yes, you must read this. But honestly, all of us will read this sort of book to give context to the other bigger books when they've got maps, because this will have the decent maps in it. Because, I kid you not, Walking books tend to have very good maps. Let's see. Question 20. How much to watch The Princess Bride? It's too valuable for me as something to wind up my cousins, the fact I've never watched it. Night Eagle from why is there no record of an accident with a Halo from CV-633 in October 1969 caused by the terror that came off a helicopter just before landing on CV-63 with lost 9 crew in a Halo? Well, if there's no record of the accident, how do you know of it? This is the first question I'd ask. If there's no record of an accident, then how do you know about it? Obviously, there's some records somewhere. I would track through those information and I'd find out, is it a such with that date, or was it did happen late at night, in which case it's filed on the 10th on another day, or is it, where is it filed, what's going on? There's all sorts of scenarios to go looking into. Personally, I haven't ever studied that incident, so I have no foggiest clue. But yeah, if you know it happened, if you know that something happened CV-63 in October 1969, there's a record somewhere. Use those records, find and search from those the other records. And it could be transferred, it could be filed under a weird header. There's all sorts of scenarios where it could be. In the nicest way, the amount of weird things I found. I won't say what the file was in National Archives, but I did once find some very interesting things in a box folder in the National Archives, which did cause quite a few of the very nice people in the National Archives to get very panicked very quickly. And it was sorted out very, very, very promptly. Okay. Henk. Oh, goodness gracious me. So, you've put Jutland happens to be 9 to 12 months later, and the German Naval Fleet Air Arm is equipped to level about 4+ dozen aircraft around historical, according to sources I could find. How much could it change priorities? The German meant to sink perhaps 8 to 14 cables of historical free battle cruisers. Well, that would be a dramatic amount of battleships for the Germans to sink. And so you're reckoning 48 aircraft come in at that time and cause that much damage. Are they all equipped with torpedoes? Because if they're not equipped with torpedoes, they're not sinking that many capital ships. And honestly, there are all sorts of problems with that. But if they manage to do that, that's going to change things historically massively. The main problem you have with that is that also if you wait 9 to 12 months for that engagement, you're also going to have a very different ground fleet to deal with. So that's your problem. The ground fleet is going to have grown even bigger. The battlecruiser fleet is going to have gone through a lot more gunnery training, so they're going to be in a better position. AA guns are being fitted to the fleet already quite widely at that point, and they are pushing through a lot of carrier integration, and they're doing more and more exercises with carriers. And that's the big advantage the Royal Navy has. Every time they want to do a major fleet exercise, they disappear off into the North Atlantic. They go out of Scapa Flow and they turn left instead of turning, well, they turn to port instead of starboard. So they turn into the North Atlantic rather than into the North Sea, and they can have big exercise and integrate things. The Germans don't really get that space in the Baltic to do the integration. So it's going to be interesting. There's also the fact the range of the aircraft you're talking about. Let's be honest, the aircraft which you're talking about they would have had in 1917 would not be necessarily sufficient to carry that level of weaponry far enough out to sea from their likely bases to Jutland. So you'd have to change the location of the battle as well. Black Magnus says, what if the US built all the Midway class carriers? The US Navy would be in a very good place for the Cold War. because they are a good basis to grow from. But the Essexes probably would not have lasted as long as they did. How would it change things if Titanic hitting the iceberg had been more catastrophic, sinking so rapidly there are no survivors? If there are no survivors, then that's probably going to make it even worse and even more traumatic. So ships are going to grow quite rapidly because of the amount of things they put in. You could well have a double hull approach be started implemented, but also there's going to be the huge mystery of what happened to her, where she went, and what went wrong. So if there's still been radio messages about them hitting an iceberg, then they're going to work out quickly, and it's probably going to end up with ships being a standard being double hulled. Michelle 2105. You caught Doctor Who slacking, and thanks Stardust of day. What battles are on your list to visit, and how long do you spend each battle as your total as a day? Oh, I'm definitely going to go to Camperdown, watch that for a couple of hours. I'm going to go to Jutland and watch that for a couple of hours. Probably more the Jellicoe stuff than the actual thing. And I'm going to want to go to Matapan. I probably like to go see the Armada and take a load of photos. Battle of Narvik, the third one, definitely. Might also stop in on the first and second ones as well. And probably Matapan. Yeah, that's probably what I try and get into in a day. So, and I'd try and push it for as long as I could. I'd be very, very nice to the TARDIS lady. I would be absolutely pleasant as anything. I would, of course, give her biscuits, cups of tea, everything that in a British person's wheelhouse for being nice to someone. Cake, a lot to try and extend that day. Just be like, what was the first Royal Navy aircraft carrier commanded by Naval Aviator? That's an interesting question. It depends whether you're going observer or pilot. And there's a debate over that as well, because some of the observers get command of escort carriers quite early on. But in terms of a fleet carrier, who are we talking about? Probably the guy who goes on to be First Sea Lord. Who I like to quote a lot. Oh, brain engage. Sometimes it's just easier to just go through the list and go, I know when he is. I know when he is. When's his name come up? Because I can remember the one in front of him and the one behind him, because it's Andrew Cunningham, John Cunningham, Fraser, Roderick Gregor, Mountbatten, Lamb, Casper John. So probably Casper John, maybe Charles Lamb, but he was, yeah, Lamb is interesting. So it's an interesting scenario. I would say Casper John is the first pilot, I think, who gets the commander carrier, but not the first officer, naval aviator to do it. So, and you have to remember there's some really interesting things when it comes to naval aviators, because a lot of Royal Navy pilots a lot of Royal Navy officers get additional training through other methodologies in aviation, because there's limited spaces to go up in terms of pilot training with the Royal Air Force run through the Air Ministry when they're controlled in the 1920s and 30s, but there's quite a lot of officers who go for flights and learn to fly from the carriers they're on. How many cousins do you have? A lot. In my generation, I am, as I said before, pretty much the only boy. You have to go very far out before you, on one side, a really long way out to get to boys. On the other side, not so far, but there's still a preponderance of girls. Even on that side. On one side, I'm the only boy in 40 cousins in my generation. But there are lots of them. Let's see. So it also goes back to my various great granddads who had a lot of children, a lot of children, as you did at the time, and had siblings, and also had lots of children, and so does a lot of us. There is a really last time we had a full family gathering. I think there was close to 300 people. Oh, no, hang on. The one we had up in so last time we had a full gathering, sorry, it was about 300 people. Last time we had a full gathering in Cornwall, we took over a village. It was lovely, but it was a case of wandering around, and pretty much every person you're meeting is your cousin and relation. Andrew Buffer, how much weight difference would there be between three historical Shamrock turrets and two quad turrets of rigid chain jammers? I would have to deeply study the stats to work that out. That's not something I can work out in the field when I'm running around from the top of my head. I would, I could give you a rough figure, but that would not be fair and not be accurate. So can you save that question for when I'm not moving and I'm sitting at home and I can put the stats up in front of me from the books and I can work it through, or send it to me as a Discord. Get someone to send it to me as a Discord DM question, and I'll go away and work on it, and I'll tack it onto a video at some point when I'm home. It's a bonus point after I've done the future videos. Why did USS Constellation Secretary suffer so many shipborne fires? Because it's an aircraft carrier, they tend to have problems with those things. Andrew Boher, Runan, how much could Japanese 410mm year 3 gun be bought out to? Ooh, now that is a very interesting question. So basically, their 16-inch gun, how much could it be bought out to? The thing is, every time you bore a gun out, you run the risk of weakening its barrel. You also run you're also reducing its caliber in terms of its length. So you're taking it maybe from a 16-inch 45 to, let's say it's a 16.5-inch, but you're down to 42, or no, you might even be down to 40 or 38. That is the problem. That is what happens. So you have to be very, very careful, because that's going to affect your range and your accuracy as well. It's also going to affect the thickness of your rifling, and it's going to affect how much covering you can put in the barrels. So as the Italians proved when they did it with their ships, it cost them a lot in terms of barrels. That was another reason why they were very lucky that their ships were going down a turret. They had less barrels to use, and they put their spare barrels, etc. Those barrels that were lost, that meant it didn't affect them. So how much could a 410mm be built? A year 3 gun be bought out to? You are probably talking about boring it out to somewhere in the region of 420 to 425 millimeters. But I would be very, very cautious about doing that. Probably, and I'm going from the top of my head here. So please notice, if someone who's a specialist is watching this and can correct me, I'm happy to be corrected. But I'm going from the top of my head, remembering how thick their inner tubing was, inner lining was. Lawrence, what if Fisher had backed Louis Bandberg or saying maybe announcing newspapers or something? Then Bamberg would have stayed in post, and Fisher would have been incredibly powerful and influential, but wouldn't have been having to do day-to-day management of things. Could have been the best of both worlds, and could have ended up with Fisher actually supporting Bamberg in the conduct of the war. Question 25. What if Fisher was on Titanic, dying but helping to make sure lifeboats are more properly loaded? Then we probably have the Fisher law of lifeboat requirements and the Fisher Act. Dr. Clarke, speaking in Armada, what drove them to adopt the crescent moon formation? Do we have a sea state, or the influence of fear factor of visual representation of Islam attack? No, it's their standard operating doctrine. Basically, the crescent moon formation allows for maximum defensive fire, their rate of fire, and the guns they're carrying, but also allows them to keep the ships which are less able to fight in a protected space. And that was from Stafford, I think, by Steve. Black Masters, what if HMS Invincible happened to be going to visit New York when Titanic hits the iceberg and Rush strips the turbine but makes about an hour before she sinks? Then Invincible is gloriously remembered as the ship which saved Titanic. Andrew Rover, could the Arado 95 replace cannibal launch aircraft in the Kriegsmarine, or is that the Kaisermarine? This is the trouble when you use KM. I'm going to go for Kriegsmarine. Yeah, it could have done, probably. It's not going to be necessarily easy. It doesn't fold up into the same amount of space. It's a bit more complicated to manage, but you could probably do it. You might have to reduce your aircraft numbers you can carry, and that's your big problem. Aircraft numbers you can carry and support. That always matters. If there's no pause on British capital ship cruiser construction during World War II, how many more ships could they have by the end of the war, and how would this affect the UK post-war? Ooh. Capital ship cruiser construction during World War II, no pause. You could definitely have the Lion class and the King George V in service, which is going to have an impact on things, and the carriers in service as well. And probably carrier construction going forward. So you could have a lot more in service. The big thing is going to be this. So let's say we talk about Ark Royal, and one of the things that contributes to her loss, certainly, is the amount of damage she'd already sustained and fixes she'd had. So let's say you have more carriers come into service in 1940. What are you doing in 1941? Are you still working Ark Royal like a dog because you've got no other efforts, or do you send her off to be refitted and repaired and have another ship carrying her position? In which case, that ship's going to be in better condition and might not get, also might have better anti-submarine and better torpedo defense in the first place because it's illustrious class it's going to. In which case, that ship probably doesn't get as damaged or as by the torpedo attack, might not get sunk even, probably doesn't get sunk even, and probably gets to be repaired, so you don't lose both those ships. You've gained two ships then, you haven't lost the Ark Royal and you haven't lost that. So this is the thing, it's a cumulative impact. And this is why it's very difficult to say. If you don't pause capital ship and carrier and cruiser construction, you're going to have a lot more of those vessels available. And that's going to have an impact on things as things go on. If the King George V enters service in 1940, 1941, then the odds are, and there are all five of them entering service in that period, maybe even Lion as well, which is not impossible if the British push them in through capital ship construction, especially if they go to free shift construction, then there is a possibility that the fleets which Bismarck is facing at the Battle of Denmark Straits, they will be in service a lot longer, so they will have ironed out their kinks far more. But you could well be dealing with Hood being away, being in refit, because you've got enough that she could have gone into refit. But also, they could be dealing with 2 or 3 King George V's at that battle. And if there are 3 King George V's sitting there in that battle, and they're worked up, that's a very different battle. There's also going to be more carriers available, so they might have already come under a carrier strike. You might be dealing with 2 forces, each made up of 2 King George V's and a carrier. In which case, she will have suffered a carrier strike, in which case the destroyers probably won't have been left behind because they'll be able to catch up in time and get through the waves. In which case, she's going to be facing a destroyer attack whilst also dealing with possibly air attack at the same time as, 2 King George V's are blasting away. This is the thing. Accumulation, There is an advantage to numbers and quantity. Quantity, it gives you more flexibility. Speaking of from like unlimited iron brew for 5 years or flaws, e.g., no one has any complaints content quality for 5 years. Whilst I would love flawless content quality for 5 years, I'm not sure I trust it, because if no one has any complaints, are they really watching it and engaging with it? Because there's always going to be at least someone who disagrees with you. I'd love the content to be perfect though, but the trouble is sometimes things like this happen. You know, you're traveling, you're on the road, and there are compromises. It's a compromise scenario. Unlimited iron brew for 5 years though is very tempting. Jeff Beeler, did the Scanny tour visit the Gneisenau turret? No, we didn't get to see the guns yet. Every time we've been going to try and visit guns, it hasn't happened. There have been all sorts of weird things. Someday I will do a video about the Scandinavian tour and the sheer amount of times international relations have mucked me about when organising it and when actually implementing it. Likewise, what if Canada bought 4 Tiger battlecruisers, class ships, had an oil field? How's the vectorings? The battlecruiser fleet is incredibly happy, and you have 4 Tiger class, and potentially they're in service early enough if you're building 5 of those ships that you might even have one at the Battle of, I don't know, you probably would have battlecruisers at the Battle of Coronel Islands. You probably would have them on the Battle of Coronel, and if you had them, that's going to change down something the Battle of Falklands being necessary. You're just going to have so much more capability with those 4 Tiger class battlecruisers. Let's see. Would you like to have implants like in the Glinstria Avalon series? Could certainly be interesting. I'm not too sure about it, but there again, I wouldn't mind the life extensions and the ability to be able to do all that information gathering. That could be useful. But also, I'm not necessarily keen on them because there are other books I've read where those implants can go wrong. So I'd be on the fence. It can be useful. It could also be problematic. Nice to everyone. I would have to go and study the details of the August 2nd, 1988 fire in USS Constellation. As I said earlier, I'm not 100% familiar with her entire life history, and I haven't detailed studied every single incident in Texas, so I would not like to comment about the JP5 fuel leak and the uptake starting a fire. There are issues though, and aircraft carriers have fires, and there are some people who ascribe these fires to malice or various other things, and they're not. Sometimes it's just sod's law and the sheer reality of it. Question 29. If the Royal Navy decide to start replacing their armoured protected cruisers with a class of 9.2-inch armed cruisers based on and built on the same time as HMS Tiger, the Royal Navy would have been very happy in World War One. Those would have been very useful ships, and they probably kept up production throughout the war period, and probably they would have formed the basis of the cruiser maximum in the Washington Naval Treaty. Henk, if Japan started planning in 1931 to build smaller, really fast battleships, naval maneuver warfare, if you will, how many could they start building when you consider 3 dual 16-inch, that's 41 millimeter, 410 millimeter guns, channel size ships? When and how many could they build? It looks to me like 7 or more at a time. Look, so Henk, there are a few problems with that in Japan. For starters, there's the infrastructure of the engines you want to construct, and there's building anything else. So yes, you possibly could do that 7 more at a time, but then you're not building any aircraft carriers, you're not building anything else. You're just building those ships. So that's your problem. You also have to consider in 1931, if they start doing that game in 1931, they're going to need to withdraw from the 1930 London Naval Treaty, in which case that's going to push forward the construction of the British ships and the American ships a lot earlier on. And they're going to respond with bigger ships, and they're able to match those numbers and build far bigger, far more powerful ships. So whilst yes, they could probably do something interesting with them, I'm not sure it really suit what they need. And also, you have to remember the Japanese problem is that they're always betting on having to fight outnumbered, and they're going to have to fight. They don't think they can run away forever. They think they have to fight. So that explains why they go for the size option they do. So yeah, they could probably build more of them, and I often do argue that Yamato Musashi aren't perhaps the most sensible assets to go for. I think myself, a nice 9 16-inch gun ship built to a more conventional size in terms of displacement, but built faster, would have been useful. But I don't think necessarily dropping down to renowned style 6 guns is, because I think you mean 3 twin, not 3 dual, but yeah. Biomaxers, follow-up question to question 29. If such cruisers are created and a squadron then replaces the cruisers that are under the drawbridge, do you think that he would attack Goban and Breslau? Yes, he would. Those would be perfect to attack Goban and Breslau with. Question 31. What if cannot order 3 Quinlers of successors around the same time as the R-class, but they have small tube boilers with slightly slight different hull to hit 20 knots? How does it affect things in the US? US probably starts thinking their ships need to be faster. And how does that affect things? Well, if they're actually completed, then you have a fast wing of capital ships. By the time they be completed, it's probably they do not get part of 5th Battle Squadron, so they are probably linked on to linked into a first group with the ships in the Grand Fleet, and you probably don't have all of them available. You might have 1 or 2 of them actually commissioned and actually in service long enough that he's got Jellicoe to use them. If you only have 1, it's probably linked on to 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron. So 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron ends up with a fast Queen Elizabeth in it going, hello. If Germany's building a copy of the Japanese 410mm year 3 gun, i.e. the 16-inch gun, but not wire built up, how much weight difference could be expected? Oh, that's going to depend on a lot of things. One of the things I have discovered a lot here is German metallurgy was interesting. And when I say interesting, I mean it's almost every single museum you go into, they have chunks and testing of German armor plate. There was a lump of Tirpitz armor up at the Narvik War Museum, and that was very interesting to look at and very interesting to go through. But what I saw it, what I saw when I was looking at it and reading details about it was, oh my lord, was it not up to the quality which both of us could produce and not the quality the British could produce, because they had suffered so much their metallurgy through not being able to actually do the stuff. You see, the thing is, it's the institutional memory you lose. And if you think about it, their institutional memory, they don't get to build anything from pretty much 1918 to properly build stuff in the 1930s with the Deutschland class. And even then, it's not much. They're slowly building it up. Yeah, this is where the issues come in for Germany. It's that the fact that most of those people who were skilled in that art retired about 10 years ago and haven't worked for the ones who are able to bring out back haven't worked in it for 10 years, or they've worked for someone else and they've forgotten a lot of it. And the ones who are real masters of it have retired and are never coming back. And you're trying to develop it. And there's a lot of stuff which isn't written down. This is one of the advantages of one of the books that I've got in here, and it's stuff which isn't normally written down, so it's useful. So I would not like to say how much the weight difference could be. It could be affected. I think it would probably be slightly lighter, but it would also be very different performance because of that. Bug Gaze at 29. How much do things change if the US stays completely neutral up until the attack on Pearl Harbor and didn't do Lend-Lease towards the UK? you will see a lot more involvement of Canada's supplies. Canada's logistics will be far more important. But also, honestly, the US was, whilst they were beneficently neutral, they weren't doing as much as they would do post that. And whilst Lend-Lease was getting important during 1941, it didn't reach the levels it does in 1942, 3, 4, and 5. So there are some issues, but not the same, not as much as we'd like to think. It's slowing some things down for the British. Alex, hypothetical. The Axis powers swap tech in a freeway circle. Japan to Italy, Italy to Germany, Germany to Japan. Which one tech would be most useful for the recipient to have? Japan to Italy. What would be useful for Italy to take from Japan? I'm just thinking about Littorio's armed with Yamato's main gun battery. If they were armed with 6 18-inch guns, with their ability to do long-range shooting. But I think realistically, what you need the Italians to take from the Japanese is quality control for their shells. Italy to Germany. They need something. What do they need from Italy? They probably need what would Italy need from what would Germany need from Italy? Germany needs good quality torpedoes, that aerial torpedoes especially. That's what they're getting from Italy, and they need a lot of the Italian development in those to be carrying on. Germany to Japan. Honestly, I think what Japan needs is the production capacity for both turning coal into oil, band radars. I'm not sure which is more important for them to get. Aaron, what is your assessment of Admiral Fletcher? How possible to bring these using rotation sprints and Helsley? He's fairly good. He's flexible, capable, and fairly intelligent, and pretty intelligent as they come. So yes, you could have used rotation with Sprints and Halsey, but they didn't need to. That's the thing. They had enough with Sprints and Halsey, so they didn't need to use Fletcher. And that's it, very much. That's life sometimes. Leslie, yes, but the thing is, year three gun is, I know, about 102 kilograms or 102,000 kilograms, or about, that sort of weight, or 224,872 pounds. I realise that, but the thing is, working it out from wire down to built up, because those are very different techniques and very different pouring techniques and structuring techniques of how you're going to end up with a different weight of gun. It's not going to be a million miles from it, but it's going to be different enough. And I want to work it through properly. And yes, it is now books time. So let's see, we have got yes. This is another of those books which I have no idea how to read. I really don't. Admiral Falkhagen Jossens, Einsvegas, 1948 to 1973. And it's all about the destroyers and ships built in this period. And this was 49 krona. I think this is from Norway. Yes, it's Norway, I think. Let me just check. Da, 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 da. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's Norway. And it's all about his service and his experience in the Navy and what he got up to, and it's really interesting. Again, it's Norwegian, it's written in Norwegian, so I'm going to have to do a lot of translation. It's got very cool pictures in it, and it's got a lot of interesting content. And I recognise the name as one of the senior officers who've been involved in forming sections of NATO and all the stuff he got up to, and went, yes, I'm grabbing that quickly. He died in 1997. It's a really cool book. But again, this is the trouble with me. I find these really cool books. We have this one, which I have a receipt I'm supposed to take a photo of. Again, this one's from Narvik. I can't think how you can tell these are from Narvik. Not only are these from Narvik, but I also have the other thing I ended up buying in Narvik. So, those will go back in there. We have Monuments of War, Narvik 1940, which was a good little book, which I found there, which is a tiny little thing. Then I had these certificates, which I got for all my colleagues, so I've got to give them out. I should have given Dan his to take back with him, but he'll carry it back safely, don't worry. Because I have the certificates that confirms they have visited Narvik above above the Arctic Circle. So I've got all the certificates for all our team that have visited above the Arctic Circle. So that's going to go back into there. But the main book I wanted to get out to show you all. The main book is this one, The Battle of Narvik, War and Occupation, Northern Norway, 1940-45. And this is by Marianne Alson. And it's a really good account of what went on from the Norwegian perspective, and a really good account of some of the stuff they have in the museum. And it's got beautiful pictures, beautiful maps, beautiful details, and everything that went on there, and descriptions of some of the people involved. So this is the sort of thing which I really, really do like and really find useful. And again, you can't really find in places other than the museum I went to. So, yeah. Real question is, how happy is my mum going to be about the sheer amount of books I'm bringing home already? And I haven't even got to Finland, and I've heard they have really good book games there. I've heard the Finns are really good at books. Everyone's going for tea. Ooh. Or is that Steve's going for tea? Okay, what impact would happen if Germany had started World War II with their late war snorkel system? They'd have been far more deadly early on. They would have been far more deadly. But there weren't that many of them early on, so that would have led to probably a development of a counter for that, which, whilst they're still few enough, it's not going to have a massive impact. Basically, the problem for the Germans is by the time they have the really cool technology, so do the Allies and the submarine forces, and the fact is that's when by the time they have really cool technology and numbers to make use of it. Any really cool technology they have earlier, they don't have the numbers to make use of it. Andrew Boyford, if the Deutschlands had been converted pre-World War II and the removal of turrets hull length by 20 meters and adding a third screw and 4 more diesels, how much speed could a carrier reach? Okay, Hendrik. I don't mind doing alternate history, But what you're talking about is a massive rebuilding of the ship. It is a colossal rebuilding of the ship. And yeah, you're wanting to add in a third screw. You want to add 4 more diesels. Where are you adding in the hull? Are you extending the bow? Are you adding a section in the middle? You need to add a section in the middle for those extra engines. But then how are you going to fit the third screw and shaft in through the hull? All that major work. You're doing a massive amount of work here. So no one can estimate how much speed that carrier could reach. They'd be talking, because you're completely changing the hull, you're completely changing the power to weight ratio, you're completely changing everything about that hull, and you're going to be forcing a lot of compromises, because there is the theoretical speed that hull can reach, but if you're doing a cut and shunt, then what strains and stresses are building into the hull, which means that's going to affect its performance in the water. I don't want to go above this speed because water starts to come in because of the way the hull's been affected by the rebuild I've done. So you've got a lot of problems you're building up there. So I could give you a figure, but I would be talking out of my behind. And I'm not going to do that. That's a great one, except you've already blown the budget for the strip, as your Syrian says. Yeah. But, I'll find the money from somewhere. As said, I just keep skipping lunch and have light dinners. The breakfasts are already paid for as part of the booking of the hotel, so, there are ways to find money. Your ring light has arrived there, useful. Ancient Villain, will any of the shipshape crew have to suffer King Neptune's cord after Japan crossing the date line on board the airliner? There is a potential, but actually implementing it could be fun. On airliner, I think they're safe. When they're aboard a cruise ship, for perhaps another future one, who knows what we'll do. Considering how much meat they'll put away the other night, there are so many things I can sign that lot up to. No, I will not do that. I will not save the money for that. I will not do that. How about if I just use transfer ones, though? Admittedly, that would involve me having to do that myself, though. But it could be worth it. It could be worth it. Now, something to discuss on a Thursday night with my advisory committee. Right. Question 31. If Germany had had the snorkel in 1914, could they have stopped that British? Potentially. Let's put it this way. They wouldn't be able to do it in 1914, but if they'd had the snorkel in 1914, they could have possibly done it in World War One. However, again, and I say this with the nicest of ways, they don't have that many subs in 1914. And by the time they will, the British have fairly good intelligence penetration of the Germans. They will know about the snorkel, in which case they will probably come up with methodology. Now, ASDIC is a little far in the future for them to probably develop that, but a depth charge thrower is certainly not beyond the realms of possibility, and doing therefore a lot of depth charges and going and dropping a huge amount of depth charges is quite possible. Basically, the odds are what you get is, instead of the instead of the Royal Navy having to building the flowers initially as minesweepers, they'll be built as anti-submarine warfare sloops. Also, not sure the snorkel is really that much help, as much help as you would think it would be, because of their prevalence of mine warfare submarines in World War One and the prevalence of mine warfare. But it could certainly be advantageous in some regards, yes. Well, part of the reason the eyes look sunk is the angle, Michelle. How do you say it could be worth it if that means more work? You're right. Your eyes look sunk, to say the least. Let's put it this way. I love these trips. I love them. They are a glorious, glorious time for me. They're also a lot of work in terms of making sure everything goes okay, because I want to do the best for my friends. It's one thing letting down a colleague or something like that. It's another thing letting down a friend, and trying to organize everything to make sure it all goes perfectly. I put a lot of effort into it. And it's been frustrating at some points this trip because things have been beyond my ability to influence them. But okay, we've done well, and we're now off to and doing things which are going to be amazing. I will say though, I'm having pretty long days. I am having pretty long days. And even with my functioning insomnia trick, that hasn't always been a help. I would also say, and this is going to sound like terrible complaints, but one of the things I like about coming away on the trips and when we do the trips is usually I get a twin bed. I get a double bed to sleep in, which, whilst I don't do much sleeping, I do find slightly more relaxing because I can stretch out more weird angles and rest parts of my body which I managed to hurt in the gym. And that's another thing. I do not recommend hurting your shoulder in the gym before you leave. It's really not sensible. You really won't get your shoulder any better during the trip. And yeah, it's been fun. But yeah, the beds in Scandinavia have mostly been singles. Although theoretically could be a double, apparently, if you're very svelte people, I suppose. I would say that's another thing. Please note, the Scandinavians are lovely, great people. Norway and Sweden are both beautiful people. Very friendly, very kind. Oh my God, do they dress like they came out of a magazine? I mean, you can always pick out your colleagues. You can always pick out the Brits in the room, because we do not look like we just stepped out of a fashion magazine. We really don't. But it's fine. It's good. I'll get there, and then I get to move house when we get home eventually, and then eventually I get to have a bit of a snooze and a rest for a bit. I've been told I might be able to take some time off, from working the equivalent of 2 jobs, running the house operations, sorting out this, and dealing with all the job applications, everything else I have to do for the next academic year. Theoretically, I can get some time off. Maybe I get some the books are going to be finished and sorted out, but yeah, get it sorted. But guys, if the US had the USS Portland and 3 escorting destroyers in the River Plate area, did they get ordered to engage Grasp Bay and bring the US in World War II? And how would a Portland class in the US have cruise doing that? Probably they don't. Portland would probably do okay, as much as any of the heavy cruisers in that period would do. They're all glass cannons, the 8-inch cruisers. But no, they probably would not engage, because in that period in 1939, there is no way you're dragging the US into war. The public are just not with it, and I don't think Roosevelt's going to try and push it. With the Japanese yen being so low, how will this affect any future ship crew trip? If the Japanese yen is still low when we get there, the conversion rate, woohoo, it's going to make things a bit cheaper when purchasing food. That's the other thing I will say about Scandinavia. It's it's expensive. Okay, one of the things they do is they do a very low tax on necessities of life and practicalities of life and living costs, but they do highly tax luxuries. And the trouble is, luxuries are things like eating out, etc. And when you're staying in the place for a month, you eat out a lot because that's your only option. I've got no kitchen facilities in here. I'm eating out if I'm eating out, if I'm eating. And so that means tonight, I went and got a pizza with Gareth. We ended up at Pizza Hut. And a pizza and Coke came in at 220 something krona, which I think is about £18. Now in the UK, that's not too dissimilar, but it'd be slightly cheaper potentially. And it always adds up. This is the thing about these trips that, we don't never ask for that funding. We ask for funding whenever we're putting the budget out to all of you and asking for support. We're always putting the funding for the hotels and the travel expenses. We're not asking for the money we pay for admittance to museums, because we always pay for entry into museums. We're not asking for funding for food. We're not asking for funding for any of those things. We're literally just for the accommodations in the hotels and the travel costs. That's the two things we ask for funding towards. And everything else we find ourselves. And the trouble is, this year it's my turn to be coming from a scenario where I am constantly paying out bills. Last year, it was two of the colleagues who were in the scenario where they had constantly paying out bills. So last year, I wasn't exactly rich, but I was far more comfortable than I am now because I'm in the process of moving house. And as I've said before, I'm at the point where all the money's gone out and no money's come in. All the money's gone. Hey, no money. I'm not in debt. Well, not technically in debt. Bridging loan thing is, we'll leave that to one side. But that's mortgage bridging loan stuff. That's not personal. That's a different form of debt than personal debt in some regards. It's still a lot of money, but we're not going to go into that. But basically, I've been cash flowing quite a lot of my life, and the trouble is, the trip here, the cash flowing out is far greater than it normally is, and it's even more expensive. And no matter how much money you put aside, you spend more. You always do on these trips because, let me put it this way. This is a wonderful experience, a wonderful beneficial experience from research perspective and from putting stuff in context perspective. And tomorrow to get to meet paradox people is going to be really cool. And all these things are amazing and really useful for me to share the love and spread the love of history and try and get more people interested in naval history. But there are also a lot of one-off experiences that I'm probably never going to get again. I would love to come back to Sweden. I'd love to come back to Scandinavia again. I really want to visit Gothenburg again. I really want to spend some more time at the Maritima and the other museums there. I want to spend days exploring the Aerospace Museum there. But what's the realistic chance that I'm going to get to do that anytime soon? I'm moving house. This year, my only holiday, or rather trip, whatever you want to call it, is going to be this one. Next year, my only trip is probably going to be wherever we go again because of sorting out the house. So other than research, it's going to be work trips or staying at home. And I don't mind, that's life. That's what you do as an adult. Sometimes life has to come first. And rather before living, you have to have life. Well, so that means we're talking 3-4 years. And honestly, I want to visit Hyder as well again. And there's all sorts of things. So there is sort of sometimes some of the money you're spending is honestly money you're going, I'm not going to get the chance to be here again. I'm not going to get the chance to buy these books again. I'm going to buy them now, and I'm going to figure out the money bit as I go on. And yeah, it's expensive, and it's probably not the most sensible policy to have with money, but I live very, very simply and very structured for 11 months of the year. I'm going to have my 1 month of fun. Speaking of night, Andrew Rover, if Germany developed a large 31-inch before the war and developed a wire-guide detector 20, 25 kilometers before the war, how much could that have helped the surface ships themselves? It would have been massively scary to deal with. How much could have helped them? Well, if you've got that range, if you've got a 25-kilometer strike range or 20-kilometer strike range, that's a massive area to search for enemy targets. And if you've got that bigger torpedo in the water, that's going to be a big thing to try and stop. It's going to give them an advantage. How others are going to react to that, though, is going to be interesting, because if they're putting all that effort in developing all that, it's going to leak out, it's going to be picked up, and there are going to be people putting ideas of working out how to deal with it. And one of those things might even be using the anti-submarine mortars to try and cut the wire. Certainly would be something I'd consider doing. Detect torpedo in the water, boom, blow up the cable. Larry says, how would the Battle of the Plate gone if the British had 4 County-class cruisers? The Grass Plate would have been sunk. If it had been 4 full-fat counties, it would have been sunk. Black Maximus, if Canada had built, say, 4 or more county-class cruisers, had a squadron of them, and had sunk KMS Deutschland before she was renamed, how does it affect things? I'm surprised you're not suggesting that naked Canadians hadn't boarded and captured her. That's what they usually like to do when they can't find a German vessel. But how would this affect things? It would have been a massive blow, and that might have caused Hitler to remove all ships' names at that point. He does it after Narvik to everything and destroying below. Question 25. Did HMS Yukon and old 1942 light fleet carrier program use cruiser turbines? Not really. They use carrier turbines, capital ship turbines, but they are, they're carrier turbines, but they are closer to cruiser turbines than battleship turbines. But really, at that size of turbine, once you're dealing with the larger cruisers, capital ships, and carriers, it's more of a scale thing than anything else. Senator, what is the worst depiction of naval combat, naval life ever in a piece of media you've come across? I'm going to reserve the right not to mention it, because that might give it attention, and I have learned the lesson of the Blackburn. Black Guy 829. Could Allied battleships keep the German Panzer divisions at bay if they were released to attack Allied forces on Normandy till the Allies landed enough heavy forces? Honestly, I think it would be a good way to lose a lot of German tanks. I really do. With the likes of Texas and Warsaw providing fast support, those ships have quite literal plot armor, and quite literally are do anything they can to fire their guns at the enemy. Nice to go, everyone. Question 27. Would it be reasonable to think that Animal class converted aircraft carriers would adopt the Courageous class aviation fuel management systems? Which one? The Courageous class go through about 3 different generations of upgrades of aviation fuel management systems. So which one? The answer to your question, 9681, is they would start out probably with the one equivalent to that fitted to Eagle and Hermes in 1920, and then they would develop beyond that as the time period goes on. So they'd have the 1926 upgraded system, probably about the 1931 upgraded system, because it's about one. And by the way, when I'm calling these this year systems, by point, they've changed enough they should be considered a new system. But they keep changing different components and improving different things within the systems as on an ongoing basis. So realistically, it's an ongoing improvement program, new things being added in. And you have 1934, 1937, and 1939 you have margin for improvement. So you have all these sort of generations within the fuel management system. So the answer is yes, they probably have similar ones at similar time periods, but they would probably have better, they would probably upgrade them as well. Question 206, do we know why the Ferry Barracuda Mark IV never got off the drawing board? It wasn't felt to be of value. Question 205, would it be likely that with a delayed World War II, the redesign of the Ferry Barracuda would take less or more time? With a delayed World War II, you wouldn't have the fight over engines, so you wouldn't have the Ferry Barracuda necessarily going through a massive redesign. You had to because of the engine squabbles, so they were probably in service. Question 204, is it accurate to say the Mark V Barracuda was what the British actually wanted? It's closest to their original vision before they start mucking around with the engines, yes. And we've got more books to go through. So we have Patrolsbåtsboken. Now, this is a very cool one. This one is, of course, I think this was picked up in the Upbug, wasn't a Gutbug, yes. And it's all about the lovely patrol boats. And it is gorgeous. It's full of pictures. It's full of great content. Once again, it is written in a language which I do not speak, or rather do not read that well, but I am getting better at it, and it is full of interesting pictures and things for me to work from. And considering the amount of videos I'm going to be doing about patrol boats from this trip alone, it seemed perfectly sensible to have. See, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's really good. It's really cool. Then Freeman, sadly I've been exiled from Scandinavia back to the harsh realities of Croydon, although my Uber is rapidly getting me out of here. Alex will need to have a look after himself. Did he get overexcited at the tram museum? I was fine at the tram museum, it was fun. I'm doing well, and I'm looking after myself fine. It's not me who's been in trouble. It's been other than, and it's been the usual one who have been the issues in wellness. I'm fine. I'm just a little bit actually for me on the tired side. But to be fair, that's going to be dealt with because I've got a whole 2 days. I've got most of I've got a day, most of the day and night on. Well, in terms of travelling time, it's the overnight ferry between Stockholm and Helsinki to have a nice sleep. And we all know I like to sleep aboard ship. Best sleep I've had this trip has been aboard ships. And here we go. Icebreakers or Isbriter. Again, it's a really cool book, and this one was 175 krona. Oh yeah, but it's got all the drawings in. Again, it's written in Swedish, but that doesn't really bother me too much. Again, there's Google Translate, there's all sorts of things which I'm going to work through on this one. And this is a really, really cool book. And again, all the drawings, all the pictures, all the things in it, I really, really love to have and love to work through. It's just great. Yes, I have spent far too much money on books already, and I'm probably going to spend even more money on books. And I'm probably going to go back and be living off baked beans and iron brew for about, a good month and a half to equalise out my incomings and outgoings. Because, as said, I don't want to be in debt. I'm not going to go into debt, but it's fine, and I don't mind it. Let's be honest, it's good for my waistline to live off, to cut down on the food. It's always good, you know. Skipping lunch is a fairly decent thing. The fact that Dan has made it back to the UK alive is really good. I look exhausted. The bags on the motorbikes. Bags. Oh, yeah. It's been getting everything done and getting it all done to the level I want to get it done to. It's been fun. It's now 20 past 10 at night, so I'm probably not going to go on that late. I'm probably going to cut this off in about another 20-30 minutes. And in my case, I will probably sleep tonight. I think I'm in the mood. I'm actually going to get some sleep tonight, rather than be awake all night. Andrew Bofa, if the wire-guided torpedoes and Sea-Hound equivalent are developed before the war, how much damage could this combination do? How much damage could this combination do? They could do a lot of damage, but again, and I say this in the nicest way, the Germans, as they're developing them, they're going to probably push through other developments. And so this is one of the scenarios where whenever I see the Germans people going, well, why haven't the Germans developed this, what happens earlier? Well, what are the British going to respond? Now, they might not respond as they did eventually, historically, because they might not have the technology available at that point. But what technology could they think about at that point, which could be to counter that? So which other technological route could they go now? None of this stuff will happen in a vacuum. So whilst I do believe it would give the Germans a bit more of an advantage at the beginning stage of the war, when they actually have less forces, the thing is, because they have less forces, it's also going to give British more of a chance to learn from exactly what's going on and develop a counter for it. I won't Henderson myself. For one reason, I don't smoke, although... Oh! Remind me to get a new shoulder. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Question 26. If the Dominions have been building cruisers, destroyers, subject, could they build like fleet carriers and reusing design of tank class cruiser turbines? They could probably modify those turbines and scale them, yes. Knight to Griffin 1, would it be accurate that had the Royal Air Force not been so troublesome, when it's not the Royal Air Force, it's the Air Ministry, not the Royal Air Force. So with the Spitfire, Hurricane, Merlin and Griffin, i.e. with the Merlin engines, the Griffin engines of the various aircraft they're using, that the war effort would have been made easier. The RAF, the Air Ministry were very worried. They were caught in many ways napping. You have to remember they focused on bombers, and suddenly the fighters and radar made a lot of what they've been saying about the bomber wars get through very problematic to try and defend. And so they were making up for that. And the RAF Air Ministry fundamentally believed that the best thing for the security of Britain was the strength of air power. It did cause issues. It did cause problems for the Navy. But there are also scenarios where, frankly, they needed those resources to make up for the decisions they'd made in the 1920s and 30s. So, Andrew, could Dr. Clarke please explain what is industrial and inefficient about my diesel Sharma question? It's not industrial inefficient, it's inefficient power generation-wise, power to weight generation-wise. You can generate more power per horsepower per ton from a high-pressure steam turbine system than you can from diesels. Inefficiently, the inefficiency in terms of industry comes in is if you're still putting the effort into developing the turbines and steam systems for the Bismarck class. If you decide to go for a full diesel navy, you would probably develop better engines and more powerful engines with better gearing system. that is probably how I would go for it. So pretty much you would want to have slightly bigger, slightly more powerful, slightly bigger probably, but a lot more powerful diesel engines for something like the Scharnhorst. So instead of reusing the Deutschland class diesels, you'd be developing their own diesels. They'd probably be evolutions of the Scharnhorst or of the Deutschland class, but they wouldn't be the same as them. Okay, does that make sense? Because that's the point we're talking about. It's a case of if you're just reusing it and you're still doing all the other work, then it's inefficient industrially and inefficient power to weight in terms of horsepower per ton. But if you're improving them and they're a next generation, that's the arc you're going along, then they could be very useful. It's just you wouldn't use the same engines, you'd put in better engines. Like they did with the guns. Let's be honest, the 11-inch guns which go in the Scharnhorst are not the ones which are in the Deutschlands. They are improved, vastly improved weapons in many regards. Is it because of the failure of the Hawkins class carrier conversion? Well, the Hawkins class wasn't converted into a carrier, really. Vindictive was not a carrier. She was more of I would say more of a seaplane tender in some regards than a carrier. And so it's the Hermes that goes the iron in the post-built light carriers were the correct way to go. The British already were of the view that post-built carriers were the right way to go, and they would have loved to have more Hermes. But the moment you have the cumulative tonnage limitation, Hermes is within that limitation. It's just not efficient. It's very inefficient to build light carriers when, for not much more effort, you can carry a lot more aircraft per ton in a larger ship. But guys, it's known how much of an impact would the Avengers with their early AWACS version, if they came out early in the war? They would have been useful, but there again, you also have an earlier AWACS sort of airborne airborne radar version of the, well, technically they're not supposed to use the radar for it, but they do manage to use the radar for it, Swordfish. So the thing is, airborne early warning, if you can have that going through World War II, that's going to have a big impact. Mediterranean would have had a massive impact. Any part of the war is going to have an impact, because anything which means that the enemy can't sneak up using the coverage of the earth to get underneath your radar, and is going to provide you with more warning about enemy air attacks, where they're coming from, how they're coming, are going to allow you to better organize, better position your strike to intercept them. And what if the Abyssinia crisis had led to war between Italy and the UK? Italy does not enjoy that conflict. Italy does not enjoy that conflict because Germany is not ready for it and would not have been able to come in, and Italy would have got bushwhacked at that point. I don't know, why did they build the Vindictive class light carrier? To see if it could be done and what good it would be. Were there any joint exercises with the Navy, Army, or RAF in the 30s? Yes. Did they improve war preparation? To an extent, but not really that much, because trying to actually get them to all agree on the results of them is always an interesting battle. What if Hermes had been a class of 8 when built? The Royal Navy would have been very happy, but it would have changed things for Washington Treaty. And here we go, the last book I have. The Spherex Marina Verband, och Scholar under 1900 Talent. This is all about the Swedish Naval Forces. And it is really, really cool. It has all sorts of details in, and it is well worth a read. And I picked it up, looking at it and going, I want that, because it gives me a very good overview of things like this. It's full of information, and this is actually the last book. So last questions, as this is the last book. It's a cool book. Again, as you can see, well over my budget. Ooh, well over my budget, because 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 books. Average value of the book each, about 20 quid. Yeah, about double the budget I originally said. Life happens. Thank you for all the super chats and super thanks today. It really does make a difference. Thanks for all the support. It wouldn't have been possible to do any of this without your support. So thank you so much. It really has helped things. It really has made them a lot better. In terms of giving us a trip to do all this history, it's been spectacular, and it's still being spectacular. And it's going to be much more content coming. Remember, we are off to Finland on Tuesday, and then Estonia as well on next Saturday. But yeah, to answer the question of what if Hermes had been a class of 8 when built, if the Royal Navy had built 8 Hermes class, then I think they might have thought more about the minimum tonnage of carriers or the cumulative tonnage of carriers. I think what you might have seen them try and push through is that you would be allowed 135,000 tons of large fleet carriers and 135,000 tons of cruiser carriers or something like that. Probably is what they put in, and then they go, the cruiser carrier is allowed to be up to 15,000 tons. Fleet carrier is allowed to be up to 27,000 tons. Thank you, Leslie. And it would work out well that way. I think it would. I think it would work out well that way. It would certainly be interesting to see what would happen with the rest of the world if that was the scenario. What the Japanese would build, what the Americans would build. I think that's what needed to happen in order for everyone to be happy, but I think it's going to change the carrier construction dramatically. Let's hear everyone. Question around how impractical is an aircraft carrying displacement range of 107,700 tons standard to full load? I was digging around a French superpower AL, his wiki recently, and found that that's pushing north of the Gerard 4 class. It's not massively impractical, but I'm wondering what size of aircraft you're operating from it, because realistically, once you're getting much above 100 aircraft, you're getting into a lot of trouble with aircraft operations. It's very complicated to operate more than roughly 98 aircraft. I would say 96 aircraft is probably the sweet spot maximum from a carrier. And the Americans would testify to that in World War II and various other wars, that when they try to operate more, the amount of issues they run into in organization, it almost becomes a self-defeating prophecy. Andrew Buffer, so the diesel development would be close to H49 set up on Charnost. Pretty much. That's pretty much the effort they're going to have to go to. Bug out in could a US World War II submarine fire a Mark 48 torpedo, and how much would impact if they replaced the Mark 14 in 1942? You need to do a lot of work on the fire control computer to get that to work. A lot of work, because the Mark 48 torpedo requires a lot more information than the Mark 14, and it requires a lot more stuff to be given from it. So, could it fire it? Potentially. Could it fire and hit anything? That's a whole different debate. 9681, so when was Lexington to get aviation fuel management system upgrade that will save her? I have no idea. I haven't ever seen that mentioned. She was scheduled at some point, but it hasn't seemed to. I haven't ever found documents scheduled it, and I haven't spent enough time in the US National Archives to really find that document properly, because I was looking for other things. Was the F6F free base Canadian Vickers FV1 Hellcat intended for the RN? I think so. I think it was. As the SPD Douglas would have adopted by the Royal Navy, get reduced wingspan and falling wings, will the British be looking at the USM as a whole? Why didn't you do this look? Probably they wouldn't look at the USM like that, because why would they bother? That's a whole lot of effort they don't have time for. Would they have get reduced wingspan and falling wings? Yes, because that was the RN's requirement for all aircraft. Question: why did HMS Tiger from Blackburn Maximus have such a gap between her aft turrets? Last questions, please. Why did she have such a gap between her aft turrets? It's to do with the positioning of her turbines and gearing and the balancing of the hull. would the F8F be the aircraft so fondly remembered as the hero Pacific and Sarasai if the F6F Hellcat is a mediocre improvement over the F4F? Potentially. I think the F8F, the really big power, which would have loved the Bearcat to be available early if the Royal Navy had got that instead of the Hellcat, instead of the Wildcat. Goodness gracious me, they probably never upgraded the Hellcat because the Bearcat was such a good aircraft. But I love the Wildcat and the Hellcat, so I'm happy with them. Question 195. So about World War II breakout 939, are the F4Fs, the R and order, the only ones they get? Potentially they get more, or potentially they get a build, or they get them built under license in the UK. There's always potential for that. Thank you, Blackburn Maximus. If the F6F Hellcat is mediocre improvement in F4F, will the British use it? And if so, what for? They will use it, and it'll be for fighter. But Gunning has the last. Although Black Maximus is also typing, I think. Would it be better for the Germans to have 11-inch or 15-inch guns around normally than 9.4-inch guns? If they'd had 15-inch guns, they'd have been a real threat to most of the battleships out there. Even 9.4-inch guns, though, are a bit of a threat. It's all to do with fire control and whether they can have enough. And the thing is, the ultimate problem for the Germans, when you're defending a coastline, is you don't know where the enemy's going to attack, and they can always bring more force. So if you have bigger, better guns in Normandy, great. What are the Allies going to turn up with to try and crack them? And then Black Maximus, if the F-15 had been adapted for a carrier work instead of the F-14, how would this change things for the US Navy? Interesting thing is they might have kept the F-15 in service. If the F-15 had been built as a dual-purpose carrier and non-carrier operational aircraft, because the F-15 still in service with the US Air Force, it probably would still be in service with the US Navy, because it would have been a joint pool. So it might not have been the F-18 which won the war, it might have won the operations, it might be the F-15 they'd have doing it. Right, I think that's the last questions. I think that's all the ones that have been put in the chat. Done. Unless the speaker for the night is questions are closed. Thank you, Spirit Ruan. Thank you, everyone. If I haven't got to your questions, please do bring them back next week. I am sorry not doing a massively long question time, but as you've all commented, I have got bags on my eyes. I'd like some sleep. And tomorrow I have to look beautiful because I'm meeting the Paradox people to talk about things. So it could be fun. It will be fun. And yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for your questions. Thank you Runon and all the admins for doing all the work. It's Steve Clarke and Leslie, etc. have been doing all the questions transferring. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bug8229. Thank you, Megascrow. Thank you, Ian Morrison. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, everyone who's been chatting away. Thank you, 96831, for so many questions. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And happily hope you enjoyed it. And yes, I'm going to go get some sleep. But I think, to an extent, it's the angle of the camera because, move it this way. If it's do it that way and it's the sort of lighting, etc., the eyes don't look quite so bad. But there's also the fact that I can't have the best lights on in here because if I turn those lights on up above me, then they strobe the whole time on the screen. It's fun. It's fun. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And thank you for supporting this channel. Thank you for supporting Shipshape. Thank you for making it all possible. It wouldn't be possible without your support. None of this would be possible without your support. Thank you. Take care and have a nice evening. Right. Let's do bum 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 bum. See? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I do admit they do have quite baggy, but I've been up quite a long time today. Take care, everyone. Thank you, and toodles.